So, my name is Leon Tukker. I'm a freelance illustrator and concept artist living in the Netherlands at the moment. And you might think, like, all right, what's an illustrator doing in a 3D a webinar? Well, let me tell you. As an illustrator, I use a ton of 3D to create my images. As you can see here, I prepared a few like images where you can see on the top image is a 3D render, and then the bottom image is after I painted over it in Photoshop. So I use Cinema 4D in my day-to-day workflow to create imagery. And the big upside for using a 3D software like Cinema 4D is it's incredibly fast, and you can create shapes that you could almost never imagine to do in Photoshop. So it's pretty neat, and I've been using it since 7 years right now. And this image I'm showing right now is the last image I made, which was for an art station contest where you had to create a futuristic city. All right, here's another one. It's like an intergalactic swimming pool made in 3D and then painted over in 2D. Here's another image made for a workshop I did here in the Netherlands for the Playgrounds Festival. Here's another thing. It's a bit abstract. I really like to work very abstractly in 3D and then like add all the details later in Photoshop. It's for me, it's always a pretty neat way to work. And the nice thing about using 3D for a still image, or for just a non-animated image, is that you can be as destructive as you want, since the image or the 3D model doesn't have to be in an animation or in a game engine, for example, like Unreal. So that's pretty great. So I can destroy everything, and I can then import it in Photoshop and change stuff around. All right, so here's another one. Some of these images use the Octane renderer, which I'll be showing a little bit as well as kind of a live viewer, so you guys know what I'm doing. And here's another one. Here you can see that I almost didn't change anything in Photoshop. Like right now, you can do a ton of detailed stuff in Cinema 4D without too much of a hassle. Really, it's all pretty easy to do. That's what I love about Cinema 4D. It's really easy to use. It's really user-friendly as well. All right, so here's another one made with a plugin called X Particles to create geometry, which is also cool. So, what are we going to do? Wait, let me minimize this control panel here because it was probably still showing. All right, I'm going to show you in Cinema 4D how to create a building like this. So we will be using MoGraph techniques to create this little building over here, and the environment as well. And then we will throw it in Photoshop to create a painting out of it. So to give it a kind of a painterly feeling, using brushes and using several digital painting techniques. So let's jump right in, because I want to talk about several things here. I want to talk about cloners, because the cloner tool is such a great tool. You can do everything with it. And specifically, I want to talk about parametric design. And parametric design is where you create one element and like copy it over and over, like make your entire scene like consist out of that single element. And also, what the cool thing about that is, if you would change that element, the entire scene changes. So that's pretty nice. And I would like to show that right now. So we are going to recreate that building that I showed on the image right here. So yeah, this image. All right, so let me throw that to my other screen so I have kind of a reference going on here. So cool, let's start with the model first, because I think we have about an hour to do this. So that's plenty of time, but we need to be kind of quick about it. So, all right, let's create a cube first. Always like the box modeling starts with a cube. You guys know that. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Boolean because I want to create an interesting shape. So let me go to the viewport here. You can already see there's some live feedback going on here because of Octane. So let's drag it over to a corner right here. Zoom out a little. I'm using the top viewport right now. so it's easier for me to throw it around. All right, so okay, we're going to create a boolean first. So let's collapse this. Let's make these models editable, and then create a boolean. And we are going to throw both of the models in. And what you can instantly see now, this is not what we want. Now the shape of the cube cuts into the cylinder, but we want it to be the other way around. So to do this is just change the hierarchy. And here we have our little elements right now. So nice. And I'm going to throw this. I'm going to collapse it. I have a hotkey for that, but you could always go to connect objects plus delete, which basically turns your model or turns your group of models into one single mesh. So okay, let's go to symmetry. Be a bit experimental here, and we can see it already copies on the x-axis here. And if we throw it around, we have a nice little shape going on. It might be nice to leave a gap open just now. Cool. And let's collapse that again. Connect objects plus delete. And now we're going to the fun part, the cloner. The cloner tool is a very neat little tool. Like, the possibilities are endless. You can, what I like to do when I'm going to make a painting and I have some sort of idea in my head, I just start playing around with the cloner and Cinema 4D and just start pushing and pulling shapes until I find a composition I really like. And as you can see, I already started my scene with some kind of hole in the ground, which will be the base, but that was so easy to make. Like, it's just basically a hole in the ground with the landscape tool as well. You guys know the landscape here. I just drag that around. Right, we don't need that. So, all right, I hope everyone can still hear me quite well. And all right, let's give it a couple more cloners here. And you can already see this could already be a nice base for the building, but that's just a bit too simple. We're not going to do that. We want to create kind of the pyramid type of skill, like the very modern architecture, very clean type of building. So let's do that. Let's throw this back into my other screen. And all right, the cloner. There are a lot of parameters we can instantly change. For example, we can say that with every step the cloner makes, it will be 1% smaller on the x-axis, for example, and on the z-axis as well. Cool. So this is a bit crooked, so I want to move this over on the z-axis. Yeah, that seems about nice. Yeah, sure, why not? And I think we might have just about enough cloners. So let's put this on 7. Cool. And we already have a base for our pyramid. What you can also do is, for example, rotate your pyramid with every step, which already creates a very different building compared to the building we already had. And change it on the y-axis, for example. Look at this. This is weird. That's pretty nice. We can use that. So this is what I usually do. Just play around with the tools that are available through Cinema here. Cool. So yeah, lots of things going on. So just a reminder, I will be covering, for some of you guys, this will be some of you guys will already know this, but I just want to show how you can use MoGraph tools in a very simple way to create a quick scene for your illustrations. Because the good thing about using 3D is that you don't have to worry about composition anymore in your final painting. You don't have to worry about lighting anymore. You can even already figure out your entire composition in Cinema 4D as well. So that makes the whole painting process a lot easier because most of the information is already there, and that's pretty neat, I would say. So cool. Let's copy this. Let's drag it over there. Let's make this a little bit smaller, so it is a bit closer to the pyramid we already had. Okay, and let's throw this into a group, and then we can give this a nice modifier. And I was thinking of using the bulge modifier here. So let's drag this into the group. What that means is that the modifier will be applied to all of the objects inside of the group. So cool. So if we would play around with this, Yeah, this is not exactly what we want, although it's already pretty interesting. But let's make this a bit bigger. Right, so because I want a gradual change in the geometry. Cool. Well, the building is already done actually. It was it's quite a fast workflow. We can still like mess around with some options here to create an entirely different shape. But anyway, we have our building right now, as you can see. You can see it here in the Octane viewer as well. Let's make a cylinder because we need a base for the building to stand on. If you look at our painting again, here is you can see there's some kind of a star-shaped base around our building. So that's what we're going to use, or try to recreate that. So let's start with a cylinder here. Let's adjust the height just a little bit, and yeah, please, I hope that you guys can follow along with me here, because I'm going as slow as I humanly can. But we have a cylinder here, and I want another one because that will be the base of our model. Wait, I wanna drag this. Yeah, wait, let's make this a little bit bigger. Cool, yeah, nice. So let's adjust the height here, make it slightly bigger. And then I'm going to show something, a very interesting tool which I have been using and abusing for quite some time now, and that's called the displacement tool. And what that does is it basically displaces or changes your polygon or geometry according to an image that you put in. So if we give this model a lot of faces over here, and then collapse it, and then go to displacer, and if we hold shift while selecting the displacer, it already throws it right underneath your model. So, right, and then we go to shader or shading, and then we select an image. I already prepared an image here, Sci-Fi Panels 5. And you can see it already starts displacing the polygons, but it's not that great. And what that means is probably that we need some more polygons to do this. It's just like I said, because when you're doing Cinema 4D for concept art, you don't have to worry about how many polygons you have or how messed up your model is, because you can fix anything in Photoshop anyway. Right. Cool. So we can display some of the geometry here and create this kind of a, I don't know, kind of a detailed base. And if I then would collapse this again, I can start adjusting it around, make it a bit bigger. And then we can also apply the same effect on the side here. So what I'm going to do is, this might be a handy tool, is wait, let me take a few steps back. I'm copying the entire model, and I'm then pressing UI, which means select or invert your selection. So if I delete this, I only have my ring left. So, and that's exactly what I needed. So if I would subdivide this again, and with the hotkeys, that would be US. So US and another US, another US, another US. And then throw a displacement underneath it again. Then, all right, Bernd, let me know if the quality changes.
It's still the same, so you can,
okay.
keep using the live viewer. It doesn't make a difference.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Well, that's a shame, but yeah. Right, so let me extrude these polygons for a second, so we have a bit more geometry to work with. And now, yeah. Oh, that's a pretty interesting effect. Let's turn on the live viewer again. Let me save it for a bit, because we don't want the whole bunch to crash here. That always never happens, but you never know. Like when you're recording stuff, and like when there's a ton of recording software going on, then yeah, it just might give up on you. But this very rarely happens. Right, so yeah, this is pretty neat. And what we also saw in the image is there are some kind of stars around the base of the structure here. So let's recreate that as well. And this is where the parametric design like theory comes in, because we can now easily select our little symmetry shape we already made. Here it is. Let me zoom in on it so you guys can see it. Here's our shape, and let's make it a bit smaller. And what we're then going to do is we're going to throw it in another cloner, but this time we're going to change the settings of the cloner. So let me drag it, underneath the cloner here. And let's put this, the parameters of the cloner, let's put the mode to radial. So what it now does, it basically clones your stuff in a radial way. And this already gives a pretty interesting effect. Like this, they're just 5 now, but they're pointed the wrong way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the transform tab here, and I'm going to rotate the clones 180 degrees. So flip it up over there, and then go back to object, and then create a bunch of more clones. So we have our star base kind of stuff. And let's drag it a bit down so it goes into the platform here. All right, I would like to create another platform. For the painting, by the way, I'm going to use a render I already did. So we don't have to like wait for the renders to be done. But just to show the modeling process, I thought it might be nice to create the entire scene. And we have about 10 minutes left. That's enough time. Cool. I want to duplicate this cloner here and make our symmetry tool just a little bit smaller. All right, and then rotate the cloners back to 0% again, and then increase the radius to like what should we do? 180, 183, doesn't really matter. And let's drag this down. Right, let's adjust some of the settings here. The radius, cool. And now we have another star pattern going on. And I want to drag the entire model down for just a bit. Let's see where is my, right. Probably if I just select everything, that would work. Yes, great. So let's drag it down so it goes into the hole. The whole idea behind the painting I was going to make is that it's basically a very big desert, and there's an oasis in the middle with a big company like gathering all the water and selling it for like 10 times the price or something. So in the painting you see that there's a river leading up to the tower, and there's a whole small town made around the tower. Those are basically a bunch of people, of course, trying to get close to the water and to the company as well. All right, so let's copy this our building, and let's hide our other building. What I do is you have these little dots next to your object. If I press Alt, you see them turning into green, but we want them to be red, so the renderer doesn't show it, or our Cinema 4D viewport doesn't show it. And then I want to collapse this one down so we have one single model, and then I'm going to play with the size of it just a little bit. All right, so something like this maybe. Yeah, it's basically just it's all playing around. It's all playing around. It's fine. It's just basically having a lot of fun. For me, doing the 3D part is I do almost all of my designs in 3D first, so that's where the most thinking comes into place, and then the Photoshop part is just a bunch of like just painting. But for me, the 3D part is also very much fun to do because it's very experimental. Right. So do we need something else? Yeah, we still need the town around our model here. So let's save it. Always remember to save your work, guys, because that can save you a ton of time. Whether it's working on like professional work or personal work, whatever you're doing, always save your stuff. But that's like you guys know that. Cool. So let me make a tube here. because we're going to make a city in the most simple way possible, humanly possible. Okay, I'm going to go to loop selection, which basically selects the upper side of our tube here, and then press UI, which is again select inverse. You can also do it by right-clicking on your model. And oh no, that's not true. that gives a ton of options, but the select inverse is actually under the select options. It says here invert, and next to it you can see the hotkey for it, which is UI. So, all right, I've done that, and then let's delete it, and then let's subdivide it. So right-click and press subdivide over here. And let's do it again, but now by pressing the hotkey, because that's a little bit easier. And then we go to extrude, and then it's another fun tool of Cinema 4D, which is super easy to learn. Because extrude, of course, it extrudes your geometry. It like pulls your shapes outwards. But if we go to this little tab that says VAR or variety or variance, I'm not sure what the correct English term would be. But if we would put it on like whatever, like 129, and if we would then drag our extrude thing, then you see that it already, there's like a tons of different heights showing up, and we can already use that for creating a very small town, because basically for our final render we only need just an indication that the town is there. Because I don't know, we could also make super detailed buildings, but since we're going to be very experimental about this, and since we're going to paint over it anyway in Photoshop, let's just keep it simple. Alright, so I think we're almost done here with the 3D model, with about 5 minutes left. So let's collapse this one. So connect objects plus delete, and let's go to the live selection tool, because now we're going to destroy some bits. And here we can check the only select visible elements box, which lets you select polygons that are not in view actually. So if I would click this, it selects all the polygons that are within the little selection circle here. So we can use that to delete our town, at least the bits of our town, to make it a little bit more irregular here. Nice. I like demolishing stuff. Isn't that just the best thing to do? Cool, so yeah, we have a pretty neat structure here. I'm still not very happy with the size, so we can just jump back in here, and you see here the little check boxes which says X, Y, Z. If we would, for example, uncheck the Y and then go to the scale tool, then it only scales the model on the X and the Z axis. But if, for example, we would check the I but uncheck Z, you can see that it only scales on the X-axis and on the Y-axis, and the Z-axis actually stays the same. Alright, so let's make them all a little bit like this. Right. Cool. And I think that's about it. What we could do is we could, for example, get a texture. I had a texture prepared here, which had an image of a slum region in Brazil. But if we would throw it onto our model, which is not very accurate at all, but what you can see is it already generates some color, and we can use this color to instantly have some detail when we're going to paint over it in Photoshop. So that way we don't have to paint over gray boxes. But for this demo, we're not going to do that. But it's just a thing you can do. You don't have to be accurate about the textures at all, since you're going to paint over it anyway. So as long as there's some color in there, it's all fine, right? So for example, we could also color the desert here, like by dragging a desert texture to the entire model, and you can see it already generates some nice color for us to paint over. But yeah, let's not do that. Great, so there's one thing we could do. Oh yeah, that's fun. This is the last thing I would like to show in terms of 3D, and it's a little bit more elaborate, but it might be nice. What if what if this building would have been demolished in some kind of, I don't know, some kind of revolt or a war, I don't know. So what we could do is we can go to MoGraph. Since this course is, since this webinar is called MoGraph and Cinema 4D for illustration, let's show at least some more MoGraph stuff. If we go to Poly Effects and drag it underneath our building model, and what Poly Effects do is you can change individual polygon sizes, for example. So I can say that every polygon is about 80% of what it used to be, like on the y-axis or on the x-axis, doesn't really matter. But if we would drag an effector to this, for example, a random effector, you can see it throws the polygons around like crazy. My goodness, I don't even know what to do with this, but now it becomes an entirely different structure. So that's fun. You can play around with that. There's a ton of parameters which you can play around with. And now we suddenly turn this into like an explosion or an asteroid field. But I don't want to use the randomizer. I want to use something a little bit more elaborate. I want to use the shader effector. And what that does is it hides or shows your polygons based on a texture. It's just like the displacement maps where it would displace the polygons based on a texture, but now it hides or shows the polygons based on whatever you put in. So if we go and add a noise filter here, and maybe pick a different one, let's pick the electric one, for example. And if you would up the scale a little bit, and if we would change the contrast so we only have black and white values, you can see that some holes already start to appear into the geometry. And that's pretty nice because now we instantly destroyed our building. But it the only downside of this though is that it now is applied to the entire building, and we don't necessarily want that. But what we can do is we can throw a fall off effector on our poly effects. And what that does is that the poly effects is only applied within this sphere. So if we would put the fallout on a sphere and drag it up, you can see that our effect of hiding the polygons or of destroying our tower is only applied to the upper part of the tower. And that's pretty nice. And we can play around. We can play around with that. We can of course change our texture. See, now the entire middle half is disappearing. And we can make it smaller as well. So there's some nice irregularities going on. And the cool thing about this is that it's very non-destructive. Like if I would say in 10 minutes, like, oh, I don't really like it, I could definitely just jump into the shader effector and change the scale of it, for example. All right, let's click this one away and cool, so that's the last bit. What we could also have done is maybe use a displacer on those little cubes here, so our buildings would have been a little bit more elaborate, but let's not do that. Let's, I've shown enough modeling stuff, so let's keep it this way. And it's, yeah, we have about half an hour left, so maybe a little bit less. So let's jump into Photoshop and see what we can do to make the image look cool and look finished. Okay. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the results so far. There's a nice, like the star pattern going on here. It could be like an Egyptian cult, for example, like worshipping the sun, but also stealing water from people. I don't know, it could be anything. That's the fun thing about concept art. You can come up with anything, as long as you come up with a cool story. Except if you're working for a client, of course, then you have to follow what they're saying or what their story is. But yeah, but the possibilities in Cinema 4D are limitless. So what I've shown you just now is just the basic stuff. And of course, all this stuff will be reviewable on YouTube. And so let me check how that's going for us. Yeah, it's still recording. So great. Let's.
One more suggestion by one of our viewers, by the way.
Yeah.
It might help if you close down Skype.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Could be worth a try.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Yeah, alright. Yeah, that might just help. You never know. I'm not sure if Skype is so taxing, but it was a very good suggestion. Anyway, let's not like procrastinate here. Let's keep going. Let's close down Cinema 4D. We don't need to save this. We don't need to save this. This is the other finished model. So you can see it's a little bit more elaborate, but it's kind of the same. The only difference is that there's a bunch of more buildings going on here. So, all right, let's close this as well. And right, here we are into Photoshop, and we can jump to the finished painting here and see what I did. Because, yeah, let's zoom in on it a little. And you can see that most of it is just random brush strokes and making stuff very abstract. I hope, guys, that this has been informative so far, and that, yeah, that you're looking forward to try these techniques out in 3D. All right, so this is the finished image. Right, let's jump into our render here. Okay, I'm going to move my microphone for a little bit so I have room to put my drawing tablet in. All right, here it is. Cool, let me look at my notes here. What are we going to talk about? All right, so we have our, I can see that my Photoshop is also a little bit slow here, but that doesn't necessarily matter. I think as long as my brushes are working, then we should be fine. It's probably because of the recording software. Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll probably manage. Cool. And otherwise, if it doesn't work, I'm just going to restart Photoshop, which is also no big deal because it starts up in seconds. So I've done the basic render here. You see some glass materials going on and some basic buildings, but I also made a material ID render, which looks a bit like this. And you might say, what the heck is going on with those colors? Well, yeah, not much, but I can use these colors to make very quick selections, and I can use these, like I would just select the green, for example, and by doing that, I would be just selecting the tower. And that's a very neat way to yeah, to make quick selections and to layer your image accordingly. So let's save this. Right. Yeah, it's still a bit slow. It might be the recording software, but yeah, we kind of need that. So cool. Let's jump in and let's make a selection first of all our reds here, because we want to lay in the desert first. We're going to go to color range, which allows you to select a single color in your image and make a selection based on that. So let's make the fuzziness a little bit lower. Right, so we have our selection right now, and let's copy it from our material ID. Right, now you see we have the red going on. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my texture here. I made a texture in Photoshop a while ago when I prepared this, and we can easily warp this into perspective. So select this one. So press Ctrl T, which is free transform, and then if I would hold Control and select the corners of this image, I can warp it into perspective basically. So I can create a nice texture here. So cool. And if we would go to our selection or go to our layer here, and then press a little thumbnail and right click and select pixels, then we instantly have our selection. And then if we go back to our layer and press Ctrl J, we're making a copy out of it. And you can instantly see that yeah, we already have our desert like applied to wherever it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart Photoshop for just a second and see if that works, because it might be worth a try. So this shouldn't take too long. All right, we're back, and let's go to File, Open Recent, get back here, and cool, and select our render. Okay, that didn't help, but anyway, yeah, it's probably because of the webinar software. But that's okay, because I can still very much show off the things I want to show off. So let's select our bit again, And now I'm going to show you something very interesting, and that's called the mixer brush. The mixer brush is still a tool that's a little bit underappreciated in Photoshop. But what this does is it samples a part of your painting and then uses it as a brush to paint from. So if I would press Alt, you can see this little crosshairs appearing, and I could sample, for example, my rocks here. And if I would then paint, you can see that I'm basically painting with the rocky texture. So, cool. Bear with me, guys, because it's lagging just a little bit, but always look on the bright side of life, what a very famous guy used to say. I think his name was Brian. Right, so let's color a bit in, and we instantly see that we have this kind of a painterly effect going on. Right, a little more. So yeah, we have plenty enough time to create at least some sort of an image that might look kind of decent. Probably not as decent as the final painting, but that doesn't matter, because it's all about showing off those tools for now. Okay, looks a little bit odd. But what we could also do is use the clone stamp tool, which is I think the hotkey is S. And that basically works the same as the mixer brush, but it just copies your photo one-on-one. Let's define the area here. Whoop. Oh, why doesn't that work? Ah, because of the lag. Right. And now you can see it samples parts of the image. Please work. Cool. Anyway, I'm going to use a regular old-fashioned good old brush to brush in the rest of the colors. So all of these resources, or all of the model and the painting, will be made available for you guys to maybe experiment with after the YouTube video is being released online, which shouldn't take too long probably. Right, so cool. Okay. Right, so we have a bit of a desert going on, but we also need a river. So I'm going to use a lasso tool for that, and basically make a selection. You guys probably know where the lasso tool is. The hotkey is the L, lasso. Let's make a nice selection of a river leading up towards our like drop, the drop off point, basically the waterfall. Let's color pick. If you have a brush, and if you would click Alt, you can see this little eyedropper tool. You can use that to sample a color that is already within your painting, and that's a very quick way to keep your colors consistent, but without the hassle of having to create a new color every time you're doing this. So yeah, let's create some kind of color. Cool. And then we go to the magic wand tool, which is located under the W, or here on the left side. And there's also a tolerance, and the tolerance if you would change the number on the tolerance, it selects more or less of the within the color range. Ooh, that was hard to explain. Jeez. So now you can see I just click the river, and it selects most of the purple color going on here. And I want to brush in some blue with a soft brush right here. Right, so let's do that, because the sky in a desert is probably blue, unless it's on an alien planet, which might as well be. So cool, we have our little river here. Okay. I see that my desert texture already also applied to a bit of the structure. That's not what we need. Cool. Okay. So let's create a little bit of depth. I also want to show how you can use the Z depth pass, because you can see it's a black and white image, and the further your geometry goes back into space, the more white it gets, and you can also change that by playing with some parameters. But you can use it in Photoshop. You can use that as a layer mask, and that's very interesting, because if we, for example, if we would go to screen, if we would make a screen layer and then select maybe the blue in the painting with the eyedropper here, please work. Okay. And if we would brush in some of the colors here to push the landscape back into space, basically, because yeah, atmosphere is a very good way to make your image look believable, and to make your image look like a 3D image as opposed to a very flat image. But the interesting thing is, if we would select our Z depth pass here, so by pressing Ctrl A, which means select all basically, and then press Ctrl C, which is of course cut or copy. And now we're going to make a layer mask. You see this little cube here with the black dot in it? It creates this little white cube next to your screen layer. And if I would alt click this layer, we jump right into that white cube. But if I would then paste my Z-depth mask in here, you can see that the mask basically changes the depth of your screen layer. So what it does is this fog element we just made, it doesn't really apply to the tower since it's way darker compared to the background here. So how this works is basically in a layer mask, everything that is black gets deleted or doesn't show, and everything that's white does show. So that's a very simple way, like without having to erase every single like pixel and then destroying your painting, and then like after you're done erasing and you're thinking like, oh damn, I forgot to I don't know, put this back or something. Then you have to go back to your history tab and take a few steps back. But using the layer mask is a very easy way to erase stuff without losing your information. So if I would select, for example, a black brush here and go inside that layer again, and then brush in here just ever so slightly, you can see that some of the fog gets deleted as well. And you can also see I'm very sloppy with it because we have some edges right here. So I would just go to white color and paint it back in. It's very simple. All right. So now our image still feels a bit flat. So what I want to do is I want to separate my building from the background just a little bit. And by doing that is we're jumping back into the material ID layer. You can look this up, by the way, like material ID Cinema 4D, and then we'll probably give you tons of tutorials how to render it yeah, in Cinema 4D itself. And these are all neat little tricks to yeah, basically to enhance your painting and to make the whole deal a bit easier for you. All right, so let me select somewhat of a darker color and then paint it over the selection we just made, just ever so slightly, to push it back a little bit into the to separate it a little bit from the background layer. So let's make a multiplier mask, and what's it called? Layer style. Right. And then brush it out just a little bit because we don't want it to be too much. Cool. And now our tower is being separated just a little bit from the background, which is nice because now it stands out just a little bit more. All right, let's brush some color into our painting. We still have to do the buildings, of course, but we still have plenty of time to do that, I think. We have about how much time do we? Let's just keep at it for 10 minutes and then call it quits. So because I've already showed most of the stuff I wanted to show in Photoshop. So yeah, what I said already, like because we have our 3D model, it already gives us so much information to work from. Like our composition is already set. I don't have to change any of that. Our lighting is already pretty much done. You can see the sun basically comes from the top left over there. And yeah, and also we already have a little bit of color going on. Like you just saw with the standard render, we had some blue color. So I want a little bit of color dynamics. So let's jump in and select maybe a purple color, so we can make this whole image look a little bit more trippy maybe. And this would be already like, if you would be working for a client, for example, this would already be enough to send over to them. Like, oh, look what I've done. It looks super elaborate and I spent 10 minutes on it. And then they would be, wow, are you a magician? I don't know. This is probably not what's going to happen, but you know, it's just an example. All right, so let's see. Okay, we have a bit of color in here. I want to darken the sides of the image, since like I don't want to go too deep into painting rules and fundamentals. But if we would, for example, make our edges a little bit darker here, not too dark, it puts more emphasis on our main building. We want the eye of the viewer to go towards the big building here, and not really anywhere else. Like we have our river, and the river like points straight at our building. So that's what I wanted to go for. And I also want to put some highlights on the building. So let's select it again with the magic wand tool, and go to let's say color dodge. Color dodge basically blows up your colors and makes it like pop a little bit more. So just experiment with this. Some of you guys may probably be familiar with the color dodge tool, but let me just use it to highlight our structure basically. And what I'm also going to try here is I'm going to go to layer styles. So if I would double click my layer, you can see here a little tab called blend if, and we can say to our layer like when the values, like when the grayscale values go beneath like this value, doesn't really matter, it doesn't show your layer. And that way we have a little bit more control of where we want our highlights to show up. Like if you would just play with the sliders, you can see it changes the, at least I hope you guys can see it with the lag going on. But that's it's all good. All right, so let me make the color just a little bit more yellow, because it's a little bit too, I don't really like the whites, a little bit popping too much. No, this is too yellow. So basically, Photoshop is also like a ton of experimenting, just trying colors upon colors and see what works. That's what I always say to people, like when they're just starting out. I just want to say, like, when you're starting out with Cinema 4D or Photoshop, like, just have fun. Just make whatever you want to make, and practice towards that. So if you are very keen on architecture, for example, then look up tutorials on architecture and just practice on doing that kind of stuff. And then if you want to, for example, implement characters, then you can do that as well. So just do it one step at a time. Don't look at the competition. Like, don't be like, oh, this guy's 21 and he's way better than me. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's a creative process, right? So it doesn't matter when you get there or how good you are, as long as you have fun and as long as you get there eventually. So yeah, that's what I just want to say, like, before we wrap this up. I still wanna apply a texture to my buildings, because now it still looks a little bit empty. I think we can leave the rest as it is. I have a little bit of a texture here with some trees going on, and let's see if we can change the color of the texture to match to our painting, because our painting is a little bit more orange and purple. And how we can do that, we can go to image and adjustments, and then we can go to match color. This is a very neat trick to instantly try and match your photos to the rest of your image. So let's try and match it with the rest of our painting. All right, this is maybe a little bit too orange, or maybe a little bit too purple. Let me try something else. I'm going to collapse all of my layers here for a second and make a new layer out of it. No big deal. Oh, oops, let's not minimize that. Get back here, Photoshop. Don't you try to run on me. Right, so Let's head back to the match color tab. Go to Final Render, and let's match our colors to our copy of layer 1 we just made. Okay, the results are the same. Doesn't matter. We tried it. But we at least have something to work with. And if we would warp this into perspective as well, or yeah, we could do that. We can throw it over our existing river, or we could drag it off somewhere here and just sample the trees. We could use, for example, we could use the mixer brush, like I already showed you before, to sample a bunch of the trees here and create a little bit of the oasis effect we were initially going for. So let's put this on 0. And let's brush in some of the trees here. There's plenty of other ways to do it. I know this is very quick and dirty, but it at least shows you what you can do with the mixer brush. Like it instantly gets you the texture you are looking for, like this gritty green texture. It's a very nice way of working. Because usually I try to hide my 3D behind a lot of digital painting, but you don't have to do that. It's just an aesthetic choice. But for example, the building will have that very like sharp-edged, clean 3D look. But the rest of the environment will be a little bit more messy, just to create a contrast. Right? So let's paint a couple more of these in, and then let's see if I can throw a texture onto the buildings. Right, I want this to be a little bit darker. Do foreground elements there. The trees over there. I'm starting to sound like Bob Ross here. Let's give this tree a little friend. I'm not Bob Ross. I'm not nearly as awesome as he was. Right. So you can see me clicking this little box here. And what that does, it means lock transparency. And if I would now brush over this layer, my paint or my digital paint only applies to the pixels in that layer. So I can instantly make those foreground trees here a little bit darker. Cool. And okay, let's make. Let's see if I still have a texture maybe of some of those slums. Do I? Do I not? Doesn't matter. Okay, let me just collapse this entire file, because wait a second. Shift click, select all. Right, and now it's now collapsed. Let's see. I have a little bit of a tileable texture here, which has some nice colors. Let's see if we warp this into perspective and throw it over our buildings. Let's see if it gives us the desired effect. Probably not without mixer brushing over it, but it gives you an idea of what you can use to get rid of those white buildings very quickly. Because what I was aiming for in this painting was to create kind of a contrast between the poor civilians around the big building and the guys who are living in the building, like the very pristine white architecture, tight sharp angles, and this slum area should be a little bit more messy, but a little bit more colorful as well. So maybe the people in there are actually happy. So what you see here, it doesn't really look good, but it already gave us some information to work from. If we would then lock transparency again, and for example use the mixer brush, we can start adding in some like suggestions of little buildings. All right, so that's cool, and let's push this back into our perspective as well, because we don't want it to. We don't want the values to be brighter than our main building, because at first it will distract from our main building. That's the first thing, and it will make the image look less believable, because there's a little bit of a rule which says like the further your buildings go back into space, the lighter they become. So it's just like real life. Like if you look at a high-rise building in the distance, it gets lighter, especially on a misty day, of course. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. Definitely know what I'm talking about. And let's clone some of the buildings in here, because I want it to look at least slightly finished. I mean, it's not really important since we have our finished image as well. But let's just get rid of those blocks. So we just made them in 3D to have a little reference of where our building should be. So, all right, let's call this one done for now, because it's already 4 p.m. and I want to have time to answer some questions as well, if there are any. So let's save this one and let's open our finished image so you can see what I used to how I progressed to basically finish the image. So Bernd, if there are any questions, please ask them, and let me just like make this one full screen so we can see what we're looking at. You can see, guys, that I added some more trees around the building here to give more of an oasis effect. I added some lights to suggest kind of an undercity type of deal. I created a waterfall, and then I create a ton of like colorful little bits to make a suggestion of a city. But if we zoom in on it, you can see it's not really a city. It's just a bunch of brushes. But when we're looking at it from afar, then it's pretty convincing. And so yeah, and basically this image took me around 1.5 hours to make. With a fast Photoshop, basically. So all right, so Bernd, if there are any questions, throw them at me.